Hi guys, this is Warcraft main channel, new era of Warcraft storytelling in the War Within. Let's take a look. It's loud. Evil spider people.
Welcome to a special edition of Wowcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. The team is heads down on wrapping up the expansion ahead of launch, but today we are joined by a few incredible guests. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Maria Hamilton. I'm the Associate Design Director on WoW.
Hello, my name is Morgan Day. I am one of the Associate Game Directors working on The War Within.
And I'm Taryn Gregory, the Cinematic Narrative Director for World of Warcraft.
So how does the team even approach something as ambitious as the World Soul Saga?
In a word, enthusiastically. We have a really unique opportunity here with the 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft that's fast approaching. We really wanted to take a step back and reevaluate how we develop our expansions. In the past, we might have come at it from the perspective of, well, we've done this a couple times, how did we do it in the past? And moving forward philosophically, we really want to take a fresh new approach and take our community's excitement and feedback and really make sure that's at the forefront of all of our development moving forward. We wanted to build upon the successes of Dragonflight, right? We felt like we built a really strong foundation there and take a lot of those successes and look to achieve new goals as we move into the World Soul Saga and the War Within. Some of those ideas would be allowing the players to have new ways to express themselves and make sure that there's a ton of variety in the content that they're experiencing in World of Warcraft. Additionally, we want to make sure that we're bringing World of Warcraft to as broad an audience as possible, and we're really working to build new accessibility features and also just new exciting ideas that we also want to bring to the table. Finally, guiding us and crafting this epic adventure is the narrative, right? That's at the forefront of all of our ideas. And
So I feel like there's been a very large philosophical shift in the World of Warcraft game design from 20 years ago to today. 20 years ago, it was like you have a massive grind. And if you don't want to do it, then too damn bad. You don't get to do it. You don't want to put in the work to clear Nax? You don't clear Nax then. You don't want to put in the work to get the Scepter of the Sands? Well, you're not going to get your mount or your title. Done. End of discussion, right? TBC comes out, it's kind of similar. Wrath comes out, maybe a little looser, but similar. And then over time, you see this philosophical shift of all of the player base that was playing in classic TBC Wrath is older. They're working jobs, they're getting married, and they have real life responsibilities. And Blizzard's blown up on the forums with a bunch of people complaining that they don't have time anymore to play their favorite game, and this game doesn't respect their time. And back in Classic, the answer to that would say, well, if you don't have the time, then you're a noob, get good, then you're not going to complete the content, Omega lol, you suck, right? Whereas nowadays, it's like, okay, well, we want to respect your time because we want you to play our game. We're going to make it very inclusive for everyone so that even if you don't have time, you'll still be able to play the game in some way and see the end cutscenes in some way and progress through the story in some way and have some type of option for you to play the game. You might not be able to clear the game on Mythic difficulty, but we're going to put in delve so you can at least progress solo. We're going to put in endgame storylines that you can see so you can actually progress through the endgame. Right, so it's a very, very, very different philosophy of if you don't put in the work, then too damn bad. It's like, I don't want to dig more holes, Grandpa. It's like, well, too damn bad. That was the old school. Now the new way of the game design is okay, well, we want everyone to actually be able to play our game because we want you to subscribe to our game. So let's make it so everyone can actually play the game to some degree, even if that looks a little bit different, right? I don't know. It's a very, very complex thing. Part of me likes the old way of if you can't do something, well, then you don't have the time then. So then just don't play or don't whine about it. But then part of me thinks well, bro, we're all in our 30s now. So I put myself in the mindset of if I wasn't a streamer, if I didn't have 8 hours a day to just play every day, because I'm in a very privileged situation as a WoW creator, as a streamer. I get to just play the game all day. So I try to put myself in the shoes of someone who works a 9 to 5, you have kids, you put them down for bed, you're exhausted, you're tired, whatever, and you hop on at night, and you really have like an hour or two before you just want to go to bed yourself, right? And it's like, you know, on the weekends, maybe you have some more time, but like really it's like an hour or two here and there. And it's like, for someone like that, a lot of the stuff they're doing and more of this modern approach is I would probably really appreciate. I would really respect it. My OG hardcore gamer self is like, no, that like, screw that, that sucks. But like on a practical level, getting older and like understanding the benefits of this, I think it's like probably a really good thing. So I feel like I'm kind of like split down the middle of like my OG hardcore 2004 classic, play 12 hours a day kind of vibe. It's like, I hate this, but my 30-year-old self with my son and my wife and the house and the family, it's like, you know, this makes it so people can actually play the game. It has its downsides and it sucks, but it makes it so people can actually kind of play the game too. So that's kind of where I stand, if you're curious. Anyway, let's keep playing the video.
All of the stories that we're developing along the way. We always like to plan ahead when we're developing World of Warcraft, but this time is a bit different, right? It's multiple expansions all at once that we're really trying to plant the seeds for these future ideas as we move forward in the World Soul Saga. And at times, I've been in meetings with our creative direction group, and it can be a bit of a challenge to keep all of these ideas in my head all at once. There's a lot of threads that are flying around, but I think the team, is really energized by that opportunity to kind of tell such an epic story. And thankfully, Taryn is here, and he's going to talk a bit about all of those awesome ideas as we move forward. And, he's kind of the expert of pulling all of those threads and bringing them all together.
It's kind of like the conspiracy meme sometimes with the dots and the threads.
What are you most excited for, Taryn, with the War Within story?
Well, working on World of Warcraft is always exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love working on this world and with this team. It's been really, really, really exciting getting to work with Chris Metzen again after his return and setting the vision for the World Soul Saga, this new chapter of Warcraft that's going to take us through the next few updates. As Morgan mentioned, right, like during Dragonflight, we feel that represented a lot of change, a lot of lessons applied, lessons learned. Looking back on Shadowlands, I believe that we took a lot from that story and developed new ways that we were going to present our characters, our villains, our storylines. And Dragonflight was the first step, but I believe that War Within is a great leap forward in our ambitions to create a compelling narrative, bring our characters to the forefront, and really open the first chapter in the next pivotal moment of World of Warcraft that will set the stakes for the story that will unfold throughout the World Soul Saga.
What would you say are some of the narrative aspirations of the saga?
Well, I feel that we've set the bar really high, and we want to meet those expectations and even exceed them. Really trying to create something in the vein of the essence of Warcraft, or the best of Warcraft, bringing that to the forefront. The ways we're going to do that is really investing in our world and story. We always say world and story are some of the most critical parts of the appeal of World of Warcraft, but what does that really mean? Our world is a character. It is fleshed out through all means of small stories, big stories, but we want people to be invested in our characters. We want them.
I'm not a lore expert, I don't pretend to be. It's one of those things that I've been getting into more recently, but like I definitely am pretty far out in that regard. But one of the things that just hit me as like a kind of a smart thing with the World Soul Saga is that you have these next 3 expansions set up where the characters are continuous, the villains are continuous, and the storyline is set up in a way where there's just continuity. And it's not just like, for example, we have one expansion where we want to kill this dragon, and the next expansion is pandas. And it's like, how did we get from here to here? And what happened to all the old villains? And why are there just a bunch of random new villains on a completely new planet? I understand the lore connects that, and I probably just, don't understand that. But what's nice about this is we're set up in a way where we have these villains and these characters that are actually going to be kind of be there, and we're going to really get to know them, and we're going to have those same characters for a while versus just, okay, 2 years with this villain, all right, next expansion, let's get a new villain up in here, all right, next expansion, let's get a new one, versus what it seems like it's going to happen is like Xal'atath is going to be this like overarching like large entity, and she's going to corrupt like the spider people and like corrupt these different people. Then we have to like keep defeating them, and then eventually we'll actually kill Xal'atath herself, right? And that moment is going to be a lot more epic because we've seen build up over a long period of time versus just like, all right, we have another villain that came out of like a brand new universe that we've never heard of before that we missed on our maps, right? So I guess I haven't thought about it that way, and that's kind of a W.
To go on the adventure with them to learn more. I believe we have some really compelling stories with some of our most known characters, some of our lesser known characters, and some new characters that we're going to meet along the way.
Something that I love about the World Soul Saga, and we were talking about the 20th anniversary earlier, is that's a really unique strength of World of Warcraft, right? We have characters that you've literally grown up with, right? Like at the launch of World of Warcraft, Anduin, I think, was literally in a crib, right?
He was a little boy. He was a little boy. Have you seen my father?
Yeah, exactly. And we've watched him grow from that boy to the boy prince to now the king that he is today. And this journey is going to continue to take characters like Anduin and continue to see them evolve, and others as well. Like Dagram plays a huge role in the War Within, and that's another character that was just a little baby when we started out, and they're going to be taking a much larger role in this epic saga.
Yeah. I think another lesson we learned is cadence and delivery. There were some instances where it felt maybe like the story was very start and stop, or people had to wait around for a long time for resolutions to long-established storylines. And so in trying to address that, we're really looking at the saga as the opportunity to resolve more storylines, bring up new questions, drive the story forward. And one of the things that helps us do that now is the improved content cadence that has been established in Dragonflight. This gives us some really, really handy tools for being able to have smaller updates between larger updates in which we can have the story move forward, we can focus on individual characters, flesh out their stories more, or even just give the sense that the world is always moving forward and that there's something always new to see in World of Warcraft when it comes to our narrative.
Speaking of characters, Xal'atath is everywhere. She is amazing. What do you think about our new villain?
Xal'atath is very much an interesting character, and I'm super excited to see the reception that people have had since we announced that she's going to be, very much starring in the beginning of the War Within. When it comes to our villains and the development of our villains, we have learned many lessons. We feel that maybe there's been a couple
I have a question for the chat. For me as a lore noob, I think Xal'atath has been better developed than a lot of the other villains in recent expansions. Do you guys agree? Do you guys feel the same way? Or was I just out of the loop in the other expansions? Like, I'm totally okay with just being like, Xaryu, you just were out of the loop in the past ones. But to me, Xal'atath feels really developed compared to other villains in recent expansions. Maybe I'm just paying more attention, right? But it seems like, that's the case, which is rad, which is what you want, right?
Instances where we didn't quite do the work to earn them out or introduce them to our players in a way that felt organic or compelling. Xal'atath is an opportunity to have this character that, for those who played Shadow Priest and Legion, it was a very compelling character. She's marked very, very highly in terms of kind of fan favorite, but also lesser known. And that's kind of a magic combination of hey, let's take this character and bring them into the spotlight and give them a really compelling arc. And much like we had done throughout Dragonflight in the development of the primal incarnates, like Iridikron and Viranoth and Farak, we put a lot of effort into bringing them into the story one step at a time, introducing them to the player, giving them compelling motivations, making them a dimensional character, making their desires, and making them real people that we can understand and get along with. And Xal'atath is now on her own trajectory to step into the limelight of World of Warcraft, and we're hoping to meet all of those same things. And I really feel that Xal'atath is going to be a very interesting character as we watch her story unfold.
I've been quite both surprised and excited by the reception of Xal'atath. I think having kind of those foundations where there's some of the community that's like, oh, you're just getting to know this person, where other people have, like Taryn mentioned, have been kind of questing with her or experiencing her story in the past. And
to be fair, I did play Shadow Priest and Legion, so I did do that quest line. I did unlock the dagger, so maybe I have a little bit more history with this specific character than Fyrakk, for example, where I'm just like, okay, cool. All right. you know?
There's also a lot of really fun stuff and opportunities as we are able to plan so far ahead now, where we can plant these seeds knowing, you know, this is the destination. And as we're moving towards that direction, what are things that we can kind of plant? And maybe the players find them, maybe they see it, and maybe they don't. There was some text that showed up in Dalaran where they were talking about like, oh, wait a minute, that's new. What's going on here? And they were kind of piecing together some stuff.
One thing I love
Oh, that's rad. So that went way over my head. Just like random old parts of the world. There's just like NPCs having conversations with like breadcrumbs towards the future. Oh, that's really cool. I didn't even know that.
we set forth to do was mid-Dragonflight, you know, in the spirit of wanting to seed these stories sooner, to have people along for the ride, to notice the little details. And there was this moment with Iridikron when he was escaping through a portal, and in development we had just slipped this little shadow, you know, elven silhouette in the background of the portal, and a lot of people were like, no one's ever going to notice that. And we're like, that's the idea. The idea is that it's so subtle that when they discover it, it's going to generate all this conversation. And it did, right? There was all this conversation about Xal'atath.
I love that. I think Easter eggs are great. 99.9% of the player base won't notice. You play by, you don't notice. But when that 0.1 does, and you read about it on a forum, and then you go back and you watch it, and you're like, oh crap, that's actually pretty sick. It's alluding to something. That's a cool moment, right? Like, I feel like everyone loves to go to Easter egg.
Xal'atath, and everyone started to get really excited. And so that kind of started building a slow burn on everyone getting Xal'atath into the conversation. So by the time she was announced at BlizzCon, it actually felt like, oh yes, we've been expecting this.
Obviously.
Obviously, right? So it's just fun ways that we're trying to seed and plant and prepare the audience for what's ahead.
I think one of the things that makes Xal'atath really, really interesting for players is there's an awful lot of them that want to be her buddy, who don't see her as a villain, right? So no villain is the villain of their story. They're the hero of their story. And that makes this interesting too, because we can play with that a little bit. We can make sure that we're leaning into it. You know, is she really the villain?
So the world is just as important as the villains. Maria, what approach have you taken for world building?
Yes?
I mean, as Taryn pointed out, and I think we've talked about in the past, the world really is one of our main characters. And it's really important that when we go into these different zones that we've created, they feel alive, they feel appropriate to their cultures that live within them. Unexpectedly, perhaps, we decided to make this a very vertical expansion. So we're starting off on the surface in the Isle of Dorne, which has your classic plains, your beautiful grasslands, and big city, Dornegal. This is where our Earthen live, trying to carry out the edicts of the Titans. And this is where the Coreway is located. So we go down the Coreway and we get down into the Ringing Deeps. And the Ringing Deeps is where the machine speakers, the Earthen that are dedicated to tending the machines and the vast works of the Titans live and work. And so where we're really starting to subvert expectations is when you go from the Ringing Deeps into Hollowfall. It's a huge, huge area. You can't tell that it's underground. You can't tell that it's a cavern. It's lit by this enormous crystal. And then as you descend, you're going to go down into the last kingdom of the Nerubians, into Azj-Kahet. And this is all about danger and dark elegance. And the whole area is meant to serve as an opportunity to learn about the Nerubians and their big city there, which has been built upon centuries and centuries and centuries of decay. They just build a city on top of itself.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that going vertically down.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we learned from Zaralek Cavern in Dragonflight. We knew we were making an underground space. We knew we wanted players to be able to transition seamlessly into that space. The idea was to sort of give you this increasingly wondrous, joyful descent, and make the world really feel alive, make it feel like it fits with those cultures that are living there. The reactions that we saw from people playing on beta when they first entered Hollowfall, which is just amazing.
Yeah, I love the
felt that way.
attention to detail on all the zones. I mean, you just mentioned Hollowfall, but like something that it took me a while to even notice it, but when I did, it like blew my mind was, like you mentioned, there's that huge crystal underground, and it's the sole light source. So if you look around the zone, all of the trees and the plants are actually facing that light source. Like you think about plants out in the world, they kind of follow the sun. Well, what if the sun was static?
We have a desire to help make everything feel right. Everything needs to feel like it makes sense. So for the Arathi, they have these airships, and so all of their tables and chairs and props and things that are scattered around their city, they all have these brackets on them because they would have been mounted on the airships when they traveled. Another good example is the earthen. So the earthen are made of stone, and their beds, entertainingly, look almost like a barbecue because they like to be warm. So there's fiery coals underneath them on their beds, and you can see them.
One of the other things I love about the
Nice.
earthen is they actually have these like memory crystals, because they themselves are almost more of a construct, but this memory crystal has, their experiences, their memories, their, life story in them. And early on in the campaign, we learn about that memory crystal. And Dagran, who's quite the little tinkerer, finds this fascinating, and there's like a whole quest line where you get to learn about these memory crystals, and you kind of put them back in the archive, and you get to learn about this culture as you're kind of experiencing through the lens of these memory crystals.
And then for the Nerubian,
Chat, what percentage of the player base is gonna do this quest and learn about the history, understand the lore, and be like, that was really cool, versus what percentage of the player base is gonna have auto quest turn in with Leatrix Plus and not remember a damn thing? I'm like, I'm asking because I'm genuinely curious, because I've always been that second group. Auto quest, you're just spamming, you're trying to get to max level as quick as possible, you have no idea what's going on. To me, I think that's a majority of people, but I don't know if that's like 95% of people just skip it, or 99, or more like 70. And like there's actually a lot of people that actually go and they're like, huh, all right, what is this quest trying to tell me? I'm curious. I wonder if Blizzard even has the data. Because, like, how would they? Like, how quickly you interact with the quest or something? It's got to be, like, 95 or higher, though, or something. And that's really interesting, because they spend, like, a long time, a lot of energy, clearly, creating the story and these quests and stuff like that. And, like, 95, 99, or whatever percent of people skip. It is interesting to think about. 0.05%. I mean, maybe not that low.
we have a really funny local story, a really funny sort of take on what would happen if you encountered a Nerubian who had a fear like arachnophobia, but they're terrified of bipedal creatures because they don't have enough limbs, and it's just creepy, and it freaks them out. And there's so many more examples.
That's kind of
The team
funny,
really had
okay.
a great time building out these cultures and these stories.
One of the things Morgan mentioned earlier was making it easier for players to play the way they want to play. How is that being reflected in the content we're building?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly learned a lot from Dragonflight. One of the areas that we started to improve on and now have continued is some UI improvements around both the icons on quests in the world, but also the quest journal. We've got some cool filtering that will let people find the kinds of quests that they're looking for and the kinds of activities. We have some great UI elements when you hover over markers on the map that let you see what sort of reward there might be and how much time it's going to be before something starts for events, for example. Additionally, with the introduction of warbands, we know that players may not want to play the story over and over. They may choose to play it on one of their characters and then play other things. And so we've made sure to provide a lot of local stories. These are stories that tell more about zones themselves, tell about the cultures in those zones, tell about the places, different individual smaller characters. We've provided those in a slightly greater number than we had in the past. We are making sure that we're using some of our new features as well to help tell the story. So we have been quite cognizant of the concerns that players who don't do a lot of raiding have raised about wanting to see that final moment. And so we're allowing players to do a story mode version of the raid, to have that final fight without needing to go to the trouble of getting a raid group or finding, enough friends to go defeat that boss.
Guys, do you guys think it's a W or an L? The story mode raid feature. If you don't know what that is, you basically put it the story mode setting, you go into the raid, and it's a solo experience where you can kind of see the ending of that raid. So if you don't want to actually raid, you can still follow along with the story. I see an overwhelming amount of W's. I see a couple of L's, but an overwhelming amount of W's. So like in the past, if you couldn't see a cutscene, say like, I'm trying to think, like just like an OG raid, like I don't know, like Nax or something. killing Heroic Lich King, right? It's like, if you couldn't see that, you'd have to like go to YouTube and watch someone else recording, or like a Blizzard recording. Like, you wouldn't be able to get there in game unless you actually did the content required to see that thing. And part of me likes it as like a carrot on a stick for players to be motivated to get into raiding, whereas if you don't have that motivation to see that ending cutscene, it's like, well, I'm just not going to. But then it's like, well, I mean, a lot of players just aren't gonna raid. Like, there's like an increasingly large amount of players that play World of Warcraft that are there to just log in, hit max level, quest, do achievements, do mount farming, transmog farming, and hang with their buddies, and they just don't even raid. But Blizzard still wants to capture that player and get them involved in the story, because that's, I mean, you're gonna retain your customer better if they're involved in the story to some degree, because they're like more invested, right? So it's like, I feel like I kind of get why they're doing it. It's just like such a different concept for me, right? Like that, once again, I feel like that OG hardcore player in my heart, not hardcore as in permanent death hardcore WoW, but like hardcore as in like sweaty, try hard, rank 1, 12-hour day player. It's like, oh, come on, that's crap. But like the older me is like, okay, yeah, I kind of get that. All right, that makes sense. You know, you're trying to tell the story to more people, you know? So that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like, they're splitting me in two, bro.
Same thing with dungeons. We added follower dungeons that allow people to play by themselves or with friends, and followers that are controlled by the computer. Delves is a new feature that we're really, really excited about. It's intended to help those outdoor players be able to pop in and do something fun and meaningful, and maybe they only have a short period of time. Now, Delves also have a progression system and a whole bunch of other stuff associated with it. So we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to understand and enjoy the story.
Bro, I hope Delves don't suck. Like, I hope they're good. I really hope they're good. There's been features that come out with each expansion, and some of them I get really excited for. Like, Island Expeditions was a feature I was like really excited for in, was it BFA or Warlords or something? Was it Warlords? And I was like, that'll be fun. And it kind of wasn't, you know? BFA, yeah, BFA. And I don't know, this is a feature that I'm excited for again. Like, I hope it's fun. I hope it is executed well. And really what that comes down to is the replayability, is the difficulty not too easy, but also not like impossibly difficult. Kind of that Mage Tower just did it so perfectly with that difficulty level. And then, are the rewards meaningful enough to get people to actually want to do them for an extended period of time? Or is it something you kind of do once and never look at again? You know, so we'll see. We'll see. I want to be optimistic about it. I think it's really cool, but I don't want to be overly optimistic about it either.
In the way that they like to play, recognizing that everybody doesn't have as much time or opportunity to sit down and, you know, join a big group of people.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the major goals, is not only with variety of things that you might be familiar with, like a lot of the cool outdoor events that you might have seen, and we want to make sure that you can kind of pick and choose the ones that you find exciting and you feel rewarded for those without feeling like you're kind of required to do everything. And then with Delves, you know, that's a new pillar of content that we're building, where you wouldn't previously have been able to kind of experience this idea of like progression, but also building upon the story that we've been discussing. There's a big bad in there named Xaryu, who's kind of a lieutenant of Xal'atath, and this person's in charge of looking for the world soul memories that we're going to be learning more about as we progress through the War Within, and you'll eventually be able to unlock this Xaryu's lair, which is, you know, I kind of equate it to like Onyxia's lair. So there's this big boss at the end of this experience that really feels like it's kind of the cherry on top for this progression, as well as this story that we're telling as you experience Delves.
What's one thing you guys are excited for players to experience?
Oh, I think there's just some fantastic local stories out there that are helping sell some of the themes that we're exploring. We also have a fascinating situation where Anduin, who has had some pretty tough times and is doubting himself quite a bit, comes face to face with Farron, who is a great contrast. She's very strong in her faith in herself and in the light, and the two of them meeting and having this opportunity to talk to each other. I think this is also a really key and important moment.
I'm right there with Maria. I'm just excited for people to get to meet these new characters. And there's a lot of like really fun story, not only with those individual characters, but also the cultures that the team has been building. You know, a fun little detail, which isn't a spoiler, is you actually see these like lynxes that the Arathi in the zone are riding around on, and that's like a fun kind of nod to how when they set out, they actually went with some elves, and there's almost like this blend of cultures that are coming together in this zone. And it's really fun to kind of see all those little details as they express themselves in the game.
I think it's always an exciting time as we draw closer to the launch of an expansion where all of the content is going to be added to the game, even stuff that was obscured or hidden during testing or PTR. This classically represents the cinematics that the team has been working on for a long time and have some really amazing moments. I think the team has done amazing work on this, and I can't wait to see people's reactions to that content. And also, you know, from all directions, every tool in our toolkit, we release more multimedia projects. I know that just recently we saw the story of Queen Ansarek in the cinematic we released, and that's in this vein of trying to build up our villains, give context, give backstory, give dimensionality, and seeing how things are stirring. And all of these different projects are coming together to really amplify and excite around the story of the War Within and set the stage for the ongoing World Soul Saga.
Thank you guys so much for joining me and talking about the World Soul Saga and the world building of the War Within.
There it is. There it is. So someone in the chat said everything is an L, the story modes, the delves, all trying to make the game play solo, which is the core of the problem in modern WoW. So my take on that is you are no longer the target market they're trying to reach. For someone like you, they have classic WoW that you can play. The target market Warcraft is trying to reach is that person who wants to be still invested in the WoW universe but doesn't have the time anymore, and they're trying to get people to actually be able to play the game. The people that can play an hour or two at night, Solo Shuffle allows them to do that, whereas they couldn't before. Right? What's the random battleground or the rated battleground called? Blitz. Battleground Blitz allows people to actually play battlegrounds at a rated level where they couldn't before. Delves allow people to do some type of solo content they couldn't before. Story mode allows people so it's a in my eyes, the way I see it is it is bad for the game overall, but it's a necessary evil to allow for accessibility. Now I have to somewhat agree with you that that's probably why I haven't been playing as much retail. Like, it's probably not for me either. But I think I've gotten to the point where I've realized that maybe I'm not the target market either. And I have classic WoW to play if I want. But I'm not trying to look at this selfishly through my lens. I'm trying to look at this through the majority of people that play WoW with 9-to-5s that like really appreciate these changes, which to me seems like the majority. It's like a W. But it internally it hurts a little because I have to realize that maybe I'm not part of that target group anymore, and that hurts. But it's like, it's still the truth. People, the majority seems to enjoy that quality of life and accessibility. Maybe I don't, but I have other options. So that's how I look at it, right? Just to have that mature discussion. That's kind of how I look at it. I totally agree with you. It feels bad that the game we loved has changed so much. Yeah, no, I feel that. I definitely feel that. My like silver lining to the discussion is that we have Season of Discovery. We have hardcore WoW. Like, we have Classic Era. We have Kata. We have other options to get that OG feeling back if we want. And, you know, all of it, do it to varying levels of success. I think, to me, like, hardcore probably brings that feeling back maybe like the most. Because of that finite death experience, and something like Like if you replay Kata again as an adult, it's not going to feel the same as you did when you were a kid, right? There's just going to be differences there. But like if you're going to play retail, I always tell people this: go into it as like don't think about it as World of Warcraft. Think about it as a new modern MMO, and it's really good if you think about it completely separate from the game you played as a kid. Now, if you're holding on to that idea of the game you played as a kid, you're probably going to be disappointed because it's not that anymore at all. A lot of the things that held true to that are just gone. But if you look at it through the lens of just a modern MMO that's different than Warcraft, it's pretty good in its own way. And that's why I've kind of been quoted saying retail is like kind of like WoW 2. It's kind of separate than WoW 1, which in my eyes was like maybe the original trilogy to some degree, or maybe like all the way through maybe like MoP or somewhere around there, where it's like, okay, that's WoW, and now we're kind of in WoW 2. Honestly, they could like rename it even in a sense. Obviously, they're not going to do that. It would be a terrible PR like publicity move because it's World of Warcraft, right? But that's the way I think about it and explain it to people. It's like, should I play retail? It's like, well, what do you want? What are you expecting? You want that feeling of when you were a kid? Well, go play Classic. You want like a new game with like high-end raids, competition tournaments, high-end PvP, all that kind of stuff? Okay, that's retail. Go play retail, right? Anyway, I agree with you, but I want to just clarify some points there.